How to Love God. If you're okay, you can read, Sunil. Else I will
Yeah,
read it. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, fine. Is this full screen or is it full screen?
Yeah, it is.
All right,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Uh, how to love God. To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our own dear ones, we love God. If instead of seeing fault in others, we look within ourselves, we are loving God. If instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. If we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. If instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many, many others, we are loving God. If we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. If we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to hurt or harm any of His beings, we are loving God. To love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and find Him as our own self. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai.
Starting from chapter 7, where we should have Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Nasik, early 1929 to November 1933. In early 1929, Meher Baba moved Mehera and the women Mandali to Nasik. In May 1929, Baba visited Quetta amongst other places, and in July and part of August, Baba went again as far north as Srinagar in Kashmir. In September 1929, Baba made his second visit to Persia, Iran, and by now the Premashram boys had been sent to their homes. Mehra and the women Mandali did not accompany Baba on these travels. At the end of October 1929, Baba also moved to Nasik, and this was his base until November 1933. Throughout 1930, Baba was in India, sometimes traveling, sometimes in seclusion at Nasik, Mehrabad, or Tiger Valley near Panchgani. In May 1931, Baba made his third trip to Persia, Iran. At the beginning of September 1931, Baba sailed from Karachi, then in India, to England on the Rajputana for his first visit to the West. In 1932, Mani left school and joined the women Mandali permanently. Up until now, she had stayed with them at Mehrabad during school holidays. This began Baba's phase of world travel. Between 1931 and 1937. Baba made 10 trips to the West. Mehra and the other women accompanied him only for the visit to Cannes in 1937. So, this is the travel period that we're going to see in this chapter. So, we moved to Nasik, and this led. Apologies. So, we moved to Nasik, and this later became Baba's headquarters too, although he was away for his work much at that time. As I have said, we have stayed in my sister Freni's compound. She and her husband Rustum had previously moved there from Ahmednagar, and they had started a motor works business. It was in Nasik that Baba told my mother Daulat Mai to keep silence, and this she did for about 22 years. My mother did not return to Mehrabad to stay, but under Baba's orders, she continued to live with my sister in Nasik to help her with her many children. Because she was obeying Baba by serving her family, this was the same as serving him. In silence, my mother managed all her work. She even went to the bazaar, where she would carry a slate and pencil and write in Marathi, Hindi, or Gujarati what she needed. There, they called her the silent woman, and she died keeping silence in November 1952. She died obeying Baba's order. In the middle of 1931, Baba told us that he was going to visit the West and that he would be sailing on the Rajputana. We had seen so little of Baba lately and had felt so excited about this visit with him, and now he gave us this news. When will we see Baba again? We sadly wondered to ourselves. As soon as my work is finished there, Baba told us. And he told us we were to be happy, to take care of our health, and to obey the orders that he had given us. So we obeyed Baba. We knew that for his work he had to go to the West. Baba knew that we would miss him, so before he left, he told us that when there was a good film at Circle Cinema, a theatre run by the Mandali, we would go see it. After so many years at Meherabad and no contact with the outside world, this was a great treat for us. That was how we came to see Layla and Majnoon and Shireen and Farhad. I remember that the cinema had 7 circles of lights in the colors of Baba's flag, which lit up one after the other. Now, we knew that the Westerners must be entertaining Baba, and naturally, there was a little feeling in us of competition. So we decided that we too would entertain Baba when he returned. We had seen a very amusing Indian film at the Circle Cinema, and we wanted to put the whole plot on for Baba. Mani had now joined us for good, and she is a very good actress. We put her in charge of the play. Since there was singing and dancing in the film, we sent Big Korshid to see the film again to catch the tunes and the dance steps. She also brought a program at the theatre with the words to those songs. Each of us, myself included, had a dance, and those with good voices had songs too. I also played another small part disguised as a boy. So we practiced and practiced our parts and made some lovely costumes and even false mustaches from real hair. And when Baba returned to Nasik at the beginning of 1932 from his first trip to the West, we put on our play for him. I'll just scroll up to see the photograph. That's Mehera dressed as a Persian girl for her part in the play performed for Meher Baba in Nasik on his return from the West in 1932. I think she's just dressed in her own regular style. Okay, our makeup was so beautifully done that Baba could not recognize who each one was. He enjoyed the play very much and said to us, "It's so good, tomorrow you must do it again, and I'll bring the Mandali to see it." This first time only, Baba and a few women, those from Ramju's family, had watched. So I had done my dance. Now that the men Mandali were coming to see it, I asked Dina Talati to dance in my place and wear my costume, but I did play that very small part I had disguised as a boy. So Baba's treat to us of going to the cinema inspired us to give him a treat. Between 1931 and 1937, Baba made 10 trips to the West, and during each, we missed him very much. While he was gone, we tried to occupy our minds by making a garland and a crown and an embroidered robe for him to dress up in which he returned. In which, sorry, let me read that line again. While he was gone, we tried to occupy our minds by making a garland and a crown and an embroidered robe for him to dress up in when he returned. In those days, we were very young and we liked these sparkling things. Luckily, we had some silk saris to use as material, and somehow we got gold thread, sequins, and paste jewels. I designed the embroidery patterns and the jewelry, and we sat together when our household work was over and made the individual flowers and buds, or stitched gold thread on net for the embroidery on the robe, and so on. In this way, we would keep ourselves busy with our attention always on Baba and surprise him with our handiwork when he returned from his work. One day in early 1933, Baba told us, "We are going to Bombay in 2 days to receive the Westerners. So pack your good saris and look your best." For the very first time, Baba's Western disciples were coming from England to India, and we wondered how we can look how we can we look. So there's a typo there. How can we look our best wearing these matha banus? Matha banus, if we remember correctly, it's the Iranian face scarf, which is basically worn rolled around the face. We had been wearing them now for years, but Baba said that for this meeting we could take them off. We excitedly packed for Bombay. There were many of us women at that time in Nasik, and we traveled to Bombay by train. There we stayed on the upper floor of a very big and nice bungalow in Kandivali, a suburb of Bombay. The men Mandali stayed downstairs. Before the Westerners arrived, Baba reminded us, "Be sure to wear your good saris and do your hair nicely." We did not know any hairstyles at all. At that time, my hair was very long and I just wore it in a bun tied under the matha banu. However, I knew that Baba wanted us to look smart, and to please him, I let my hair down and clipped it back. This was a new experience for me. Instead of our usual cotton saris, we put on our best silk ones, and obeying Baba to the letter, we wore lipstick and powder, to something we had done only before for plays. Baba was very pleased and he was very naughty too. When in England, Baba had told the Westerners about us and we had left everything to be with him, that we lived very simple lives and that we were very spiritually minded. And here he was introducing them to fashionable looking young women in silk saris. Now we understand that he was testing the love of his Westerners for him. Baba sent my sister Freni to the pier to receive the Western women on his behalf while we got ready. When they arrive, he told us, "Tell them that I am hiding and that I'll only embrace the one who finds me, no one else." So Baba did not greet the Westerners when they arrived. Instead, he hid himself in the house and his lovers had to seek him. When everyone arrived, they greeted us very lovingly, but quickly asked, "But where is Baba?" We explained that they had to find him and that only the one who found him would receive his embrace. Off they all rushed, some to the drawing room, some to the bedrooms, and so on. Small Khurshid, who knew very little English in those days, was standing in the drawing room when in ran Norina. "Do tell me where Baba is," Norina implored. Found him, said Khurshid, muddling up her tenses. "Oh, oh, where was he?" asked Norina. Found him, Khurshid kept urging. It was so funny. Then came some happy sounds and Baba's clap, and we saw Baba coming out of the bathing room holding Delia's hand. How happy she was to have found Baba first. He had been hiding in the corner of the bathroom between a cupboard and the wall, and only she had thought to look there. All the Westerners were so happy and excited to see Baba again. "Delia found me," he told them. "So I'm going to embrace only her." "Yes, Baba," they replied, and their happy expressions vanished. They now all looked sad and left out. Baba embraced Delia, but then he turned to the others and embraced them too, one by one, and their sad faces again lit up with joy. A little later, Baba said, "Now you can entertain me." And they did. Margaret did a lovely dance solo. Audrey danced too, wearing a skirt with a hoop, and Mabel also performed. After the Westerners had danced for Baba, Baba had Mani do an Indian dance to entertain them. Then one day, the Westerners wanted to wear saris. They came to our room, we dressed them in saris, and I remember helping Delia. This was a new experience for them all, and they wanted their photos taken. On to the upstairs terrace they went, and with Baba in the middle, Minta on one side of him, and Audrey on the other, the photograph was taken. It was now April and Bombay was very hot. Baba decided to send us girls back to Nasik while he took the Westerners up to Kashmir with sightseeing on the way. Here's what I found. There's a photograph, the old water tank on Mehrabad Hill when Mehra and the women Mandali moved there in 1933. The entrance to the east room on the right hand of the building where Mehra lived is concealed by bamboo screening. That's here. But isn't the tank room? Okay, so in 1933, when they came back, they went up the hill. Okay. Isn't this the
That's where the library is right now.
yeah, the
You know
library?
that
This is the
building
retreat
where
building.
the flag, yeah.
Yeah, the retreat building. It's called the Meher Retreat. Right?
No, it's not in the Meher retreat. This is next to Baba's Samadhi.
Yeah. So that building, I think, is called Retreat, and it now has a floor on top. So that was built later, but yeah, I think the one with the flag. You're right.
And the other side it shows flag, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes women Mandali, when they were alive, they would come from Meraza to Merabad. Usually they would go there and rest, but nobody else could go.
Okay.
Just their caretakers, yeah.
Okay. So in the previous phase, if you look at the previous chapter, they were not allowed up the hill. So maybe now they've flipped it, and maybe the post office building was not there, so they were allowed to stay in the tank room. Anyway, that brings us to the next chapter, and the period is 1933 to December 1938. So next chapter is 8, Mehrabad Hill. Maybe I'll read for a little more, and then would you like to read, Mahu?
Yeah, sure. I can read, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah, sure. You can start now, and if you're okay.
Okay, sure. I can start.
Okay.
So, chapter 8, Mirabad Hill, November 1933 to December 1938. At the end of November 1933, Baba moved his ashram from Nasik back to Mirabad, and the heart of the women Mandali at this time, Mera, Mani, Naja, and a small Khurshid with Sunamasi and Valu now now stayed on Mirabad Hill in the old water tank. Since joining Baba to stay in 1924, Mehera's life had, by Baba's order, become increasingly sheltered, and during these years on the hill, her life was supremely um, cloistered. With all the women on the hill, Baba was very strict, and especially with Mera. Between Mera's room and Baba's kitchen on the hill, Baba had built a bamboo matting passage, and Mera left her room, which just had windows near the ceiling for ventilation, only to go through this passage to the kitchen for work or to the bathing room. She was not allowed to go anywhere else, not even in the compound, except occasionally when accompanied by Baba. By Baba's order, Mehera was not to see any man, hear a man's voice, or even to hear a woman mention a man's name, nor for some years was any man permitted to see her. One woman, either Sunamasi or Haku, which is Vishnu's mother who lived down the hill, was always on watch in a room under a small water tank outside the gate. And whenever a man had to come on the hill, for example, to bring supplies from the bazaar, the watchwoman rang a bell, and the women had to close the door to their room. When a workman, such as a plumber, who could not be depended on, not to speak, came to be came to do repairs, Mani had to play the sitar, sometimes for hours, to block any sound of male voices. Even later, when the Westerners came and read to Baba from any newspapers, they could not say a man's name while on the hill or in Mehera's presence. So sometimes the news became very confusing. When Mehera he traveled, for example, to Mysore in 1936, Mani would be at one side of her holding her arm, another woman would be on her other side, and one would be in front and one behind. Mehera wore dark glasses with the lenses covered with brown paper so that she could not see at all. She just looked down and walked, and those around her would guide her. When Baba's birthday was celebrated on a large scale in 1938 at Meherabad, and Eastern women lovers from Bombay, Pune, and Nagpur stayed on the hill for the first time, along with a few Western women already there. There were signs at different corners of the compound instructing the women not to mention any man's name. No men came on the hill for that occasion. In these days, Baba did not permit anyone, not even the other women, to touch Mehera. The only exception to this order was his sister Mani. When the Western women came to stay at Meherabad, some in late 1937 and others in 1938, some of them made clothes for Mehera. But Mehera's measurements and fitting were done only by Mani. Baba also did not allow anyone to check Mehera's photo or the negatives of her photo or any clothes that she had worn. These orders were enforced well into the 40s. While in Nasik, Baba had allowed Mehera to see the occasional film, but now by Baba's order, Mehera could not see any films or write or read anything. In the kitchen, staples such as rice, dal, and sugar were kept in old tins which had writing on them. So strict was this order not to read that Mani covered the writing on all these tins with paper. And at that time, Mehera's name was never written. So if any note went to Baba concerning Mehera, he was referred to as capital M or she. When the women needed supplies from the bazaar, they wrote the request on a piece of paper and sent this list to Baba, who would scrutinize it. If he approved, he passed the list on to the bazaar man who, who bought the items and gave them to Sonamasi, on which in the little tank room outside the gate. Sonamasi would tell Baba that the order had come, and she would then give the items to the women. Whenever Baba went to the West and women were given a small amount of money for their food and necessities, and this was to last them until Baba returned. Sometimes Baba stayed away for a longer time than expected, and it was very hard on their uh, rations. They lived extremely frugally, eating the simplest food, patching the patches on their clothes, and stretching out their few supplies such as soap. Baba's order was that they were not to wear torn clothes. If there was a tear or hole in their clothes, they had to immediately change or sew up the hole. Sometimes their clothes were so patched that they could not obey this order by sewing one garment inside another, and many of their clothes were of several layers. Not wanting to burden Baba by asking for anything, they tried to hide their threadbare, threadbare condition from him by wearing their good clothes when Baba was at Mehrabad, and their patched and layered ones when he was traveling. One day Baba returned without informing them of his coming, and when Baba found them in their threadbare clothes, they received a scolding from him for not having told him of their need. In this life, nothing was to be kept from Baba. While Mira was totally secluded from the world within her room and the kitchen, she had no privacy at all. But by Baba's order, Mehera was never to be alone. Mani's foremost order from Baba was to be constantly with Mera, leaving the room only for her baths and personal necessities. As Mera was never to be alone, another was appointed alone with Mani. At first Khurshid, and after 1938, Harman Masi. This meant that even when Mera went through a short bamboo matting passage to the kitchen, someone was always with her. In addition, when Baba was absent, traveling in either India or the West, by Baba's order, Mani kept a diary for him, noting every detail of Mehera's health and moods, and every action from the time she woke up until Mehera went to bed. Every movement Mehera made was noted down by Mani, as was the time she did it down to the bed. This life of poverty, this life of poverty, purity, and obedience that the women led during these years was experienced by them not as one of deprivations, but of joy and fullness. They had nothing, but they also had everything. Throughout this period, and also during the 1940s, when there were many women staying in the ashram up until the new life, Mera was always aloof. Her whole attention was focused only on Baba, to think of Baba, to be with Baba, and to do whatever and to do anything for Baba. It was very quiet, and even in the 40s, she stayed in her room, hardly mingling with the others, unless Baba was also there. At these times, Baba would have Mera sit beside him, and when Baba left, he would return to her room. Those women who saw her during these years immediately recognized her role and knew that that she was very special. Baba around this time said of Mehera, quote, Mehera and I are one, and many times what I feel, Mehera also feels at the same time. He told the other women, I love you all, but Mehera is my beloved. She is like my Radha. She is my very breath, without which I cannot live. And Baba kept Mehera only for himself.
So I think the italics portion is basically second person or edited portion of the book. So this is the introduction to the chapter now. Now we get to first person Mehra from the non-italic text.
Oh, okay. So this was an introduction. It
Yeah,
was
so
told by
it was
someone else and not Mehera.
exactly the editors or whoever has basically summarized this phase of the life, and then
Yeah, Janet.
here starts her account.
Hmm. We
By the
returned
way,
with
Mahu,
uh,
there's something with your audio which is not as good as it was as it was always, right? So some change you've done because it's not coming through completely flawlessly. Do the
oh
others agree?
really?
Yeah,
Maybe I should change my microphone.
maybe. Now it's a little better. So anyway, keep going.
Okay. I think I need to increase my speaker's volume. I
Volume,
do
maybe,
now.
maybe.
We returned with Baba to Mehrabad from Nasik at the end of 1933, and we four girls, Mani, myself, Naja, and a small Khurshid, with Suna Masi and Valu, now stayed on the hill. We were the very first ones to be there after the Premashram boys, and the atmosphere there was very beautiful. We could feel Baba's love and presence there, all that he had given to the boys. Baba had loved those boys very much, and they had to love him. And at last, we were staying in the room in the water tank where the Premashram boys had lived, and where we had we had so often pictured Baba during those years when we were not allowed on the hill. Our room, the East Room, had and still has no proper windows, just very high ventilators set in the wall near the ceiling. We had only a bed, a trunk, and a little stool each, so we were not very crowded. When we were first there, Baba, on next page, Baba slept in the little room adjoining the kitchen as his cabin near the Samadhi had not then been built. Baba even slept outside sometimes on some flagstones near his Samadhi where the Premashram boys had sat. The upper floor had not been added to the water tank, but before we came from Nasik, Mama had the kitchen where Mansari now stays built for us, in which to cook his and our food. And this is also where we ate. It was known as Baba's kitchen. The tin shed where the Western and Eastern women who came later had their meals was not yet there. Baba had bamboo screens put up to make a passage from our room to the kitchen, so we were very secluded. Our life was very strict, and for several years we only left our room to go to the kitchen for work or to the bathroom. or even Baba very occasionally took us for walks. I never walked in the compound, and for exercise, I would walk in my room or in the kitchen. Later on, Baba did allow us to play badminton, where the tin shed now stands. Sonamasi and sometimes Kaku, Vishnu's mother, kept watch from a small room under the little raised water tank. And when anyone came up the hill, she rang a bell. This was the signal to us to close the door to our room until she rang again to signal that they had left. When we heard the all clear bell, we opened our door. So our lives were very strict, but we had beloved Baba to ourselves, and how filled with joy we were. His love and his company were all we ever wanted. Papa got up very early, and we would be up by 5:30 or 6, even in winter. After washing our faces and hands, we heated Baba's washing and shaving water, and when Baba had shaved, I gave him his tea and a slice of bread. That was our breakfast, tea and a slice of bread, or at other times, tea and bananas. With just a very few of us there with Baba, those quiet early, those quiet early mornings were very precious and very homey. When Baba went down to hit the hill to the mandali, we did our work in the kitchen. I filled Baba's water jar, folded his napkins, tidied his shelf, washed his soap dish, and his hairbrush and comb, and so on. Then I helped with the kitchen work, cleaning and washing the rice and dal, peeling and cutting up vegetables, grinding masala and coconut for Baba's food, churning butter from the cream we saved, and whatever else needed doing. Naja at that time was cooking for Baba. A little later, from just before the blue bus tours, Naja was not well for some years, and then I cooked for Baba. Baba used to come up the hill for his lunch around a quarter to 11 after working with the men Mandeli at Lower Mehera. As I was never in the compound, I could not see Baba coming up the hill, but Suna Masi would see him from her post under the water tank. When she let us know Baba's coming, we would rush to have everything ready for when he arrived. In the summer, that kitchen is very, very hot. So then we served Baba his meal in our room. Having thick stone balls was a little cooler. Then when Sona Masi gave us the signal, we would quickly take some lukewarm water and Baba's basin and towel to our room to be ready for when he arrived. Now the ground is very hot in April and May at Mirabel, and Baba walked up the hill in the heat of the day in his open sandals. One day, Gulmai, who was visiting us, said to me, "The ground is so hot, and Baba has been walking so much in the hot sun. The soles of his feet must be burning." And he explained to me how to help relieve this burning. After that, I followed her advice, and during the hot summer days, I applied cow's ghee, which is clarified butter, to the soles of Baba's feet, and then rubbed them with a small copper bowl, which helped to take away the heat. After that, I put Baba's feet in a bowl of water for a short while, and then gently wiped them dry. After this, Baba felt more comfortable, and he would then have a short rest before lunch. Such lovely feet Baba had. Even with all the work he did, they stayed slender and beautifully shaped, and his legs were slim and strong. In the cooler days, Baba ate in the kitchen. I poured the water for him to wash his hands, and I gave him his towel. And then Baba sat under a window at a low table at the opposite end from the stove against a thick cushion, and I served him his food, usually rice and dal and chutney, or rice, vegetable, and chutney. Baba's order was that we were not to lie down during the day. So in our room after lunch, I did a lot of sewing. I mended Baba's sadra and coats, made him new ones, mended my clothes, and also stitched new ones when we had material. And I tidied Baba's body and kept his clothes and trunk tidy. Everything was for Baba, and we thought only of him. We thought only of him. Baba's order was still that I should not read or write, and when the kitchen and mending work was finished, I made photo frames and embroidered brooches from his hair and nails for Baba's beautiful photos. I remember too that I peeled cucumber seeds, which I then roasted and kept ready in a jar for Baba to enjoy. In the evenings, Baba sometimes played badminton with us where the shed where the shed now is. And once in a long while, when Baba was in the mood, he took us girls outside the compound for walks along the ridge of the hill. We never went alone. We would walk some way, and then Baba would sit down with us around him, and we would walk for a while. In 1935, he had a lovely white donkey, and we took the this is Mehera's photo.
Yeah.
This is the famous one.
So actually,
Like
uh,
with the cat.
we will just see the photographs and then continue. So this is Mehra standing in the doorway of Baba's kitchen on Mehrabad Hill in the mid 30s. And then there's another photograph. Mehra grinding masala, spices on an Indian style grinding stone on Mehrabad Hill in the 1930s again. So now it's back to the donkey. So the last line was 1935. We had a lovely white donkey and we took the, yeah,
And we took the donkey with us on our walks. One day I asked Baba to ride him, and so the next time we went for a walk, Baba did ride the donkey a little. He looked so sweet sitting on that white donkey's back. On some evenings, Baba took us to sit behind the kitchen. Baba would be seated on a cotton rock, and we could look out at the hills in the distance. There was no wall then. There was no wall then. Sitting there, Baba gave us a spiritual discourse or told us a story, or he made Mani or the others tell him a joke or a story. Baba would say to us, enjoy this, take in as much as you can, because later it won't be like this. We had our evening meal around 6 o'clock. It was usually a vegetable and bread or some cheese, with a chapati or a cup of milk and perhaps some jam. Until the beginning of 1935, Baba generally wore his hair loose. But the wind at Meherabad in the summer is very strong, and coming up the hill, Baba's hair would blow in his face and eyes. So one day he told me to braid it. That was the first time I braided Baba's hair. In the early days, I sometimes tied it back with a bow, but I had never braided it for him. Baba started to grow his hair after he left Sakuri. Every time the avatar comes, he has long hairs. This is in parentheses. And then Baba's fingernails grew rather long. I would remind Baba, your nails are very long. Baba would reply, yes, they need to be trimmed. So I would cut them. So I would cut them. Of course, I saved the clippings. It was during these years on the hill that I began to trim Baba's mustache. Baba in the early years never cut his mustache. He trimmed it first before going to the West for the first time in 1931. And after that, the men mandali must have cut it for him. This is how I learned to do it. The little room that is now the library was empty. Mani would occasionally go there for injections that she had to have for her health. But at that time, I never went there. One day, Baba called Kakabaria, one of the men mandali, up the hill and had him wait in this little room. Then he called Mani and told her on the alphabet board, which he was still using, Baba said, now watch carefully. Kaka will show you how to trim my mustache, and you are to explain it to Mehera. Then after 15 days or so, when Baba's mustache again needed trimming, he came up the hill to our kitchen and told me to trim it. Mani had explained how Kakabaria had done it, but still I was feeling very nervous about doing it. With a tiny little comb, I gently combed Baba's mustache straight down, and very carefully I cut first one side, then the other. Then I stood back and looked at it. One side was shorter than the other. Oh, Baba, I told him, it's not quite even. Let me see, Baba said. So we brought him our looking glass. Yes, I see, Baba told me. Cut a little more from this side. So I trimmed the longer side and again stood back to look. The side that had been longer was now too short. Baba, that was Baba. Oh, I'm sorry. But that was not all. By now, Baba's whole mustache was a little shorter than he usually wore it. Baba again looked in the glass and said, "Leave it like this. Don't cut it anymore." He did not want a mustache like Charlie Chaplin's. From that time, I always cut Baba's mustache. After that, first time I knew how to do it, and it was not lopsided again. Baba, Baba does not mind if we make mistakes the first time, because then we learn how to do things properly. During these years on the hill, Baba came and went a lot as he was traveling to the West for his work and also touring in India. While he was gone, Baba saw to it that we were kept busy. We still had our kitchen work, and after lunch, often a boiled potato, butter, chapati, and pickle instead of rice and dal. When our sewing work was finished, I made more photo frames and brooches and pins. We could not just send for anything we wanted from the bazaar. So I made frames out of sticks, shells, pieces of looking glass, colored paper, ribbon, and even one from cardboard that I decorated with the sealing wax. And I continued to make lockets and brooches containing Baba's photo, in which I used Baba's lovely hair and nails in the design. I even filed bits of glass into the shape I wanted to cover these photos. We also finished making the garland, crown, and robe that we had started in Nasser, and darling Baba wore this for the first time on his birthday. On Baba's trip to the West at the end of 1934, during which he visited Canada, Baba knew he would be away longer than usual, and he gave us a special party. Baba said that we were to make a very big frame containing 12 photos of him. We did everything ourselves. We made the frame from wood. We made flowers from crepe paper, which we arranged around each photo. We made the backing ourselves. In short, we did everything except cut the huge piece of glass for the frame. It took us almost the whole time Bob was away to make it, and it is still hanging in my room at Mehera. Baba knew how much we would miss him, so he gave us this to occupy our minds while he was gone. And while we were making it, we were not only obeying Baba's order, but we were always seeing his lovely face in the photo.
There's another photograph, and Mehra and Meher Baba in the East Room on Mehrabad Hill on Baba's birthday celebration 1938. Baba is wearing the crown, robe, and garland designed and made by Mehra with the help of the other girls. These articles are now on display in the museum room. Museum room behind Baba on the wall is the finished photo project that Baba had given Mehra and the girls to occupy them during his 1934-1935 visit to the West. So that's the one. So this is the one that was just described. So there must be 12 of Baba's photos here. Three, 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 three. Yeah, 12 photographs. Lovely. So I think we are out of time, so we can stop here. Any thoughts? Any reactions? What strikes me right through this reading is the simplicity and childlike uh, qualities of Mehra, which I think was because of the way she was led to be so secluded and everything. And of course, obedience. We see that again and again, flashes of that every time. And the great love that she had for Baba. Any other?
Jai Meher Baba.
Yes, Nehaji.
Yeah, last month I was in Nasik.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's all, new city and very crowded. But if you are with some Baba lover, it's beautiful place to be, at least one visit is a must. So there is a huge caves and, Baba visited with women Mandli, Western women Mandli. So that is not mentioned here. Maybe they are focusing more on Meher, Mehra, and Mehrabad. So the chapter was very small, but there is lot to explore in Nasik.
Interesting. I think once we have more time, we have so many places to visit which are linked to Baba. Anyways,
Baba did a very special work in Nasik, particularly in 1937. His work was to bring the West and East together. So that's why
Yes, yes.
he invited the Western women and the Eastern women, and they were to work together, cook food for him, have conversations, and so forth. Later on there was some fight among them. I think fight among the Western women, Norino and a few. They had a difference of opinion about how to make food for Baba. It got so bad that Baba said, I got to cancel this ashram because without harmony, my work would cannot be done. So it was because of that the
No, there was
Nasik
also the
ashram.
Nasik. There is very strong Brahmin. It's that area. So Baba said it will always be very difficult for me to work here, and most of my time will go into all this. So Nasik is not the right place for me to work. So that was the main reason actually. And of course the other things of Baba, uh, what you are saying is right.
Yeah, we can only guess what Baba was doing there, what
yes.
he had in mind,
Yes.
God in human
Yeah,
form.
yeah. I think in 1990 there was a big program, Baba program there, and Mumbai Center and Pune Center. Few people from Pune Center came to Nasik, and we saw the place which was built for these Westerners, the big women who stayed there. They were, there was a row of,
Yes. Sarosh,
and the first
Sarosh
time, yeah,
Palace or Sarosh House.
yes, Rose's house,
Yes.
and
Even
Baba
this
made
theater
sure,
where they used to
yeah,
show, show film to Baba, and they all used to
correct,
work
correct,
there. So I have
yes, yes,
seen that. I have the photograph, all the
yeah, yeah,
photographs.
yeah,
If
yeah.
I have, then I'll share
Yeah,
it.
even I have
Uh,
in the physical form, and
Oh,
Baba
good.
made sure that the Westerners are made comfortable and they don't face any difficulty in terms of lifestyle they live. And beautiful actually. I don't know if those blocks of rooms are still there or not, but I've seen them. Yeah, yeah, Baba.
Interesting. So I
Yeah,
have not
it's
been to
a,
Nashik, so maybe it gets on the bucket list. But Baba's traveled
Go with
so many
someone.
places.
Go with a Baba lover. Otherwise, you will be lost. Pune has a different city now. It
Ah,
has changed a lot. Yes.
correct, correct, correct. Sure. Anyway, so on that note, we'll wrap up for the day. Tomorrow, don't miss discourses. Look forward to seeing all of you when we pick up where we left off on discourses.
I have one comment to make.
Sure.
Um, I was actually very touched by the lifestyle that these women really were living in complete poverty, very strict rule. There was absolutely no desire on their side to put to work. And because that desire wasn't there, I believe, and they had so much love for Baba. So, even if Baba would say jump off the cliff, they would. So their love actually brought that obedience to that level. Um, and how they took care of Mera for Baba. I mean, it's very interesting that,
Yes.
yeah.
Actually,
So,
She was such an evolved soul. And she was with Upasni Maharaj first, and she has her own training and everything. So that part never comes out because all we see is her outer beauty and how she loves Baba and things like that. But actually, she there is, if some Indian writer will write this entire story of Mehra, I'm sure she will write, or he will write, in a very different point of view. So, and also it's simplicity and not poverty, which most of the Westerners get confused. It is a conscious decision to lead a simple life. So,
Yeah.
being a forest officer's daughter and having bungalows and everything, she closed everything. And it is her decision to lead a simple life with Baba and to go ahead with the spirituality. Poverty is also is a part of Maya. So they were not into
I actually
poverty,
borrowed,
but they
yeah,
were more. They that is spirituality. So
I
Westerners get
borrowed
confused.
the
I
word.
just wanted to say
No,
this.
no, I borrowed
Uh,
the word from the text from the book.
okay,
Actually,
okay,
it
okay.
did use, I wanted to
Uh-huh.
be quite accurate of what I'm saying, or I'm
Uh-huh.
trying. But
There are small, small changes.
they used the word poverty at least two times, I
So
remember.
even yeah, so
Yeah.
by the editor, this word must have been used, and they keep on continuing even till today, which is not the right word to use. There are many they were in Kandivali East, so it's written Kandivali. So it
Correct. Correct.
generalized things sometimes, and there were
Correct.
many even initially also. I told
Saw
you,
some.
Karthik, है ना?
Yes. Yes. I have the
There
comments.
are
Yes.
few minor mistakes which
Typos.
need to be corrected.
So I think to add to Mahu's point, I think the Western mind does not, or Western lifestyles don't have exposure to this kind of surrender. So, like you said, all of these people had no economic activity, right? So they were not working, and they were in their prime of their lives, right? Young and youth, and yet they were doing nothing. But to an Eastern mind, to somebody born in India, yeah,
They were with Baba. They were doing so much.
exactly. So no, no, no. But to the Eastern mind, this is not odd at all, because we see examples
Yes,
of
yes.
disciplehood, and it's accepted, so, from a society standpoint, and is also respected. In fact, many parents would be proud if someone takes discipleship under a master, right? Again, that's some Eastern context compared to the Western framework of expectations, where kids get out at 18, college, and then they're expected to fend for themselves literally, right? And that's what happens even today. So just a
But
nuance.
you're right, but we really shouldn't be, when we talk about it as follower of Baba, we shouldn't be really also stereotyping Eastern,
East
Western.
and West, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one of the Baba said that there's this quote, that one of the major work of this Advent that I have come. to do is to bring the East and West together
Yes.
as one. And of course, there were many challenges. There was a lot of challenges. But, you know, toward the end, toward even in 1962, it's so beautiful a story. In 1962, in Guru Prasad, Baba told the Mehera, Mani, and a few women, Mandali, to bring your best saris that you have. And you know, he had his Western disciple, you know, came visit, of course, from the, you know, Europe, America, and then there was a very intense raining, great raining. I mean, by Baba did it. So rain, and these ladies, the Western ladies, they got so wet. And then Baba said to them, Mehera and others, like, give them this, your saris and all these Eastern, you know, dresses for them to wear again. This is 1962. So
Yeah.
very symbolic, you know, these are all very symbolic. He still was trying to bring the Western, you know, East together through these disciples, through
Yes, no doubt
these
about it.
months. Yeah.
And good point.
But anyway,
We should not be
Beautiful.
underlining the differences. And I think I am also reminded of this beautiful episode where Baba hid when when the Western folks arrived for the first time. Again, these are small things that tell you that he's so human at one level, but in that personality of being human, there is always a bigger intent. That was just to put everybody at ease, right? Especially it's two different groups. It was not common for Easterners to meet Westerners in a social context, and especially for the Eastern Mandali that was there and the people with Baba. And so he put everyone at ease by having them just explore the house and search for him, right? And made it so at ease, literally, right? It's an icebreaker. So it's amazing how Baba works.
yeah, I mean, Baba said, particularly India is the closest to on point.
Yeah.
So there can't be more spiritual land than India. I mean, it supersedes everything else, even Burma or Tibet or whatever that people go and hang out. So imagine what a challenge Baba had to bring all these Westerners and teach them spirituality and so forth. But I think eventually they did well. Yeah,
Yes.
they did well. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Exceptionally well. Exceptionally well. Yes. Yes. So right.
yeah.
So right. Beautiful.
So
Anyway,
I
so
must go now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I said we had a good extended discussion, which was interesting. And let's wrap up at this point and catch up tomorrow at the same time. Yeah.
Sure. Jai Baba.
Avtar Meher Baba
Jai
ki jai.
Meher Baba. Jai Meher
Jai.
Baba.
Ram
Avtar
Meher
Meher
Baba ki jai.
Jai Baba, Jai Baba.